Okay, welcome everybody to the DXC Tech Thursday chat. I've got Mark, Jerry and Fasil with me today. We were asked in the last session about the challenge of meeting the cybersecurity skills gap, and we were asked the question, is it a crisis? So I just want to let the three folks introduce themselves. So Mark, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Mark Evans. I'm the UK and IMEA Chief Security Architect in DXC's security business. So I'm really in the forefront of trying to recruit and hire and fill this gap effectively. So for me, it's a degree of crisis at the moment.
Jerry?
Hi, I'm Jerry Overton. I'm a data scientist and DXC fellow. I work in our analytics group, and I'm here to add sort of an artificial intelligence flavor to the conversation.
Thanks, Jerry. Fasil?
Hey, it's Faisal Siddiqui. I'm Chief Technologist for Innovation at DXC, and I lead our global blockchain practice.
Thanks, Faisal. So, Mark, earlier you mentioned to me you had some numbers about how big the challenge was in terms of...
Yeah. So it depends on what you look at, but Cyber Ventures survey claimed about 3.2 million unfilled cybersecurity vacancies by 2021. ISC Squared as an industry body is perhaps a little bit more optimistic, and they've come back with about 1.8 million worldwide by 2022. But that's a revise upward of an estimate they made in 2015 of about 1.7 million. And ISC Squared also claimed that currently about 27% of US cybersecurity vacancies go unfilled for significant periods of time. Certainly in the UK and IMEA region, we find it difficult to fill our vacancies. It takes us anywhere between 3 to 6 months to fill a vacancy, and that's not due to competitiveness within the market. That's due to the lack of skills and experience being out there.
Hey,
However,
Mark,
yeah, sure.
Where are these holes? So what specifically are the things that are missing?
I think it spans across the whole the whole area. So my focus is really in the security consulting side, and we're looking for people with a degree of experience already, and those people just aren't out there in the market looking for other roles. There seems to be quite a lot of satisfaction with roles that they're in, or we just don't have. We have a growth in roles that's faster than the availability within the market. But then if you start to look in the junior side, like the analysts in the Security Operations Center, for example, we're again just not getting the input into the bottom of the career stack. The people with interest or drive to join the industry aren't there, or maybe we're looking in the wrong place.
So am I hearing you right? Is that more like an experience gap than a skills gap?
I think it's a combination. So in the recruiting work that I'm doing, I'm looking for people with experience as well as skills. And one of the things we're finding is a quality issue, where we're finding people who've been in the industry for a while, but perhaps their quality of skill set isn't good enough. Or we're finding people with the skill set, at least in a growing state, but don't necessarily have the experience we need at the moment. And sometimes we have to work on the premise that we'll take that person on board because they've got the drive and we can mentor them through.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much of that is an investment gap on the side of the employers. How much of that, those figures that you just quoted, how much of that is because of an unwillingness to actually invest in people?
Yeah, and it potentially is. I mean, in the last 12 months in my region, we've been targeting military veterans, and we ran what we called a cyber academy. We took in 18 ex-servicemen and women who didn't necessarily have cybersecurity skills, but had related experience, knowledge, or drive. Put them through 3 months of fairly intensive training, and now they're actively out in our workforce working with customers under mentoring and guidance. So they haven't been thrown in the deep end. We put them into roles where there's a senior consultant working with them to help grow them and grow their strength and knowledge. So we're investing in that area. We're just starting to look for next year's intake of graduates for graduate schemes. And it looks like we'll be kicking off an apprenticeship scheme in the region as well, targeting school leavers, but also anyone that qualifies for well, in my case, the UK government apprenticeship schemes.
Hey, so Mark, I wonder if there's an opportunity to redefine what we consider this as a specialization versus an adjunct capability of existing people with well, let's say day jobs. You see what I'm getting to is that we've constantly been incubating new technologies, new initiatives, and we tend to think of cybersecurity as something that we hand over to a different group. And I have this great mental picture of guys in lab coats who do something really cool. I wonder if the opportunity really is to lower some of those boundaries and cross-pollinate those skills into the people who need them, and maybe get the folks who are doing the hard engineering to adopt some of that discipline themselves.
So I'm sorry, Faisal. So what are you saying? So like, if I have an artificial intelligence specialist, instead of taking my algorithm and pushing it over to the security guys and saying, hey, handle this, are you talking about me taking on some of that responsibility? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly, because Jerry, you and your artificial intelligence specialists probably are the closest to the to what could be perceived as the area to be audited or the problems to be identified. Same thing with my blockchain guys. Same thing with digital insurance. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think it's sort of very much the case. If you look at, say, some of our digital transformation centers where we're running DevOps orientated teams, squads of multi-skilled individuals who, the developers, operations specialists, operating system specialists, all together, then we should be building the security stream into that. We should be doing the security training with those individuals. That doesn't mean we don't need security specialists in those areas, but if you consider the guild concept that's being built in those areas, they need to have a security guild. They need to be skilling the other members of the squads with enough security knowledge that they are also dealing with the security aspects of the piece of work that they're doing, and then we can start. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that. You got me thinking about something here, because you start out with these numbers about this skills gap, and I'm wondering, how much of it do we shrink by doing other things? And it sounds like, okay, hunting in packs is one of the things where, security is not just somebody else's job, it's our job. And, I, as an AI specialist, I take on part of that. I'm also wondering how much of that is not so much a skills gap, but an expectation gap. So what I mean by that is, in artificial intelligence, we have a similar problem where, have these openings, but there's just nobody out there qualified to fill those positions. But that's nonsense. What we have is an expectation gap. The things that we are screening for and the skills that we actually need are two different things. Now, it's, anecdotal that, it's kind of tongue in cheek, what's on the test you're never going to end up using at your job. But it's not funny. It's a serious problem, because that expectation is starting to screen out people who we need to not screen out. And it's contributing to our talent pool problem. So what I'm wondering is the same thing happening in cybersecurity? Do you end up screening out people that should you be looking at resetting your expectations for what you consider to be a qualified person?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, Martin, what's your view on this one?
Yeah, again, I think there's reaching out to other groups. So people that may be on the autistic spectrum, the company's had some success at recruiting people from that group, are often very talented at some areas of IT. And actually the process of recruitment often selects for skills that they don't have, for, presentation skills. So actually, if you change the way we recruit and actually make it more accessible to people from more diverse backgrounds, we'll actually get a bigger talent pool to draw in, and actually draw in people that have talents that we need. So I think that's a major change we've made and can help us.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I actually consider that to be a different dimension, which I do want to talk about that as well. So, there's a diversity thing, which is, making sure that you increase the size of the pie. But then to me, the thing I'm really wondering about is the definition aspect, which is, for the people that you are looking at, how do you define qualified? Let me give you a quick example. When I screen for candidates to work on artificial intelligence projects, I'm not going to ask you about back propagation. It sends you up to the whiteboard to see if you can write out equations. I don't care, because that's the type of thing that you can figure out. What I want to know is, do you have problem solving capabilities? Do you know how to take a problem? Do you know how to break it down? Do you know how to can you understand how close you are to making progress? Do you have an internal sense of whether or not you're making that kind of progress? That's what I'm screening for. And when I do that, my pool of talent gets huge, because there's lots of smart people out there. And I'm wondering if you see that same dynamic in security.
I think we definitely do. And it depends on the area or the part of security, because I think a lot of aspects of security is, again, problem solving. It's understanding the concepts of risk and threat, but also understanding how we solve problems within the environment to make sure that we're mitigating risks and threat in the right way. I mean, I treat most of the issues that I come up with as problems to solve, as hurdles to get over or around in a secure manner. So yeah, I think there's a definite case there, and I think the recruitment work that we did with the ex-services people was quite a useful one in that respect, because we were looking for people with that armed forces background, the sort of mentality of defense, of security as a concept, without necessarily having the technical skills. We could teach them a lot of those if they had the right mindset.
Yeah, I think, Mark, the personality thing, the kind of resilience and grit, is something that is hard to teach. And certainly you can draw on people from backgrounds, say the military, and maybe people that come from other industries and other sort of life experiences.
Right.
And actually that ability to work under stress is something that can often be very powerful for us in the middle of a major incident. That person can handle stress, can cope with it, and can solve the problems in that stressful situation. And that's not something that is down to book learning, it's down to character.
Right.
That's what we need to filter for.
Now, I really like the direction this conversation is taking, because we took this from really from a skills discussion to a propensities discussion. Does this meet the future directions or capabilities rather than the current skills?
And what I'm wondering now is, I heard the stats at the beginning, and I'm thinking, okay, cybersecurity, that's pretty cool. I wonder, there's lots of open jobs. Hey, maybe I should get me some of that. Right. Yeah. If I'm deciding that I want to go from wherever I am into being one of the qualified, sought after candidates, taking, one of these open positions, and these are good jobs, what do you do? How do you get there?
Yeah, it's the perennial problem of how do you get there. I mean, I suppose the example with the Cyber Academy we were doing was selecting the right training and then targeting the right training at the right individuals. But then you have to have the program behind that. So if we're going to bring people in who don't have the technical security skill set, but have maybe the right mindset, they have the right life skills, the right soft skills, then how do we train or mentor them and invest in bringing forward the skill set that we need technically to add to the personal skills that they've got?
And I'm really asking from like the other point of view, like, from the point of view of the person wanting to initiate. I want to get involved with something like that. How do I do that?
I think part of it is taking a punt. So I mean, one thing we learned getting some people from the STEMETS group in the UK who are promoting particularly women in STEM subjects to look at some of the job specs that we put together, was that they took one look at it and said, those job specs are too male orientated. Because of our mindset and the fact that, you know, we're more willing to maybe take that punt of, well, it says we need that skill, and that skill, but I've got a couple of those, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's again, it's difficult because when we're still based on doing CV sifts, you know, doing resume sifts, we're kind of looking for certain keywords, we're looking for certain elements of experience, but I suppose people need to degree chance their arm. They need to perhaps put in that sort of covering statement why they think they would be good in that industry space. But then it's up to us as employers to perhaps make the right openings for people to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. So a couple things I want to comment on. So you made a sort of this kind of allusion to, you know, something being male oriented, or in artificial intelligence, we have a big problem with diversity, especially with along the lines of gender. So, you know, getting women represented in. And one of the areas where I found that really causes problems, and it's not so much in, you know, having the confidence to go after it, even though you don't have the full complement of skills being asked for. The thing that I see that really makes a difference is how it's presented. When you present something that's just this abstract list of technologies that doesn't really connect to you know, the problem you're trying to solve or the good that you're trying to do, I find that really attracts a certain type of crowd, and it usually tends to be guys. It's a certain core of, you know, hey, I just want to, you know, kind of connect these dots or write this program. But I have noticed that when you start to connect it to purpose, when you start to connect it to, okay, these are the lives that we're going to change, this is what we're going to actually do with the technology, it becomes more attractive to a much wider, diverse set of people. I see that in artificial intelligence. Is that the same thing in security? Do you see anything like that?
I think I can certainly see that, and I think I understand, you know, the direction that you're talking about there. I think fundamentally it requires us to change the way that we maybe advertise the roles and we think about the recruiting process of bringing people in. And maybe we should be moving away from the standardized sift the resumes that come in, pick the candidates, you go through the interview processes and look at it more as a sort of selection center type approach, where we perhaps do things differently. I mean, I certainly remember when I started my career as a naval officer, and I went through a 3-day selection process for that. None of it was specifically about what did I know about, you know, Her Majesty's Royal Navy in the UK. It was all about what my potential as a leader was, what my potential, you know, level of decision making was, how much could I stand up on my own 2 feet, and it was 3 days of well, reasonable hell to dig that out. But I knew what I was going in for. But I think perhaps we should be looking at using different methods for recruiting.
Yeah, you know, I live and breathe this with any kind of emerging technology that we happen to be incubating. There's never going to be an available talent pool for something that is still not quite mature. So I suspect. So you have to project out what am I going to need? What is the skill level in a particular thing that I'm going to need in 6 months? At that point, the number one thing that I look for is the ability to adapt and the enthusiasm to do so. Yeah. How do you bottle that? How do you advertise for that?
You got to take some risk. So first of all, I think you're right on, Faisal. It's like, why are you asking for 5 years experience in a technology that only starts to have emerged in the last few years? Like, what are we doing here? And then the second thing is, you know, right. So if you're not going to be selecting, because I think it's a lazy thing, right? Where it's just, you know what, it's easier for me to list a certain set of technologies and then ask, you know, how good is your R programming skills? And, you know, that's easier than trying to screen for, can you problem solve? And it's a lot less risky, I guess, in the short term. But you have to have people who are just willing to take that risk, I think, and just say, okay, I'm not going to get an exact answer as to whether or not this candidate is going to fit. There are some indications, and at that point, I'm going to have to take a chance.
So Jerry, I'm going to ask you to turn that around. Short term, it's less risk, but the leading question is, what's the risk long term?
Yeah. So right, giving them the test, right? And it's short term. It's less risk of getting a candidate that won't pass the test. But yes, in the long run, you have a pool of candidates who can't adapt to the next thing. And then now you're talking about the next gap. It's like, oh, we don't have people for the next set of skills. It's like, well, if you had a workforce that was more flexible and that focused on problem solving, right, then you wouldn't have to get a new crop of people every time there was a new shiny thing that emerged.
And I guess it goes all the way back into schooling and education. I mean, if you look at the approaches that are being made to sort out the whole STEM issue, STEM skills issue, and attractiveness across the world's children at the moment, it's going all the way back to preschool. So maybe we should be thinking about this in a different way and thinking about how we make our industry more attractive to the youth of today, to encourage them to actually step onto the ladder in the first place.
Oh gosh. Okay, so in this area, I so disagree. Okay, so math, science, STEM, you don't need to sell that, right? That is, it's awesome. What needs to happen is you need to stop getting in the way. So what happens, or at least from my point of view, is that there's so much garbage that gets piled on top of that, right? You have to have so many of these prerequisites or jump through these hoops, or, you have to take these 5, 10, 20 calculus classes, right? And it's such a drag, right? What we need to do is get out of the way and start, letting people solve problems with this stuff immediately. In my opinion, STEM doesn't need to be sold, right? It can sell itself. You just need to not put in so many barriers in front of people before they can get in and start doing something real with it.
Yeah. And that's kind of a move away from that focus on gaining qualification and certification, and I guess you could argue that in many cases and in many cultures, school children are being trained to pass the exams at the end of a given year to get whatever that country's qualification is to leave school and get a university place or get a job in the workplace in the first place. And we should perhaps be more enabling them to learn more in the way that they want to.
And hey guys, being able to address the requirements for testing criteria is a valuable skill. Being able to reach the qualifications to satisfy a need is a valuable skill. I think the point to make is that that's not enough. So the touchy-feely things that I'm referring to, I'm not proposing that is the end goal. I think that is one of the qualifiers.
Yeah. Hey, we got a question that was submitted here. What are some of the different tactics to recruit?
I think it's a difficult one to pick up on. I mean, I think there's tactics where you focus on, so you stop the just advertising to the market and you start focusing on individual groups. So I'll go back to the services veterans again. There's a definite pipeline of people who will be leaving that career because that's the way that career structure works.
Right.
And thus there's a pipeline of people that we could target actively by going to them as opposed to them coming to us. And I guess if you look at the graduate recruitment schemes, when we're looking for graduates to bring into our graduate schemes, we're going to the universities. We're arguably going to the careers fairs to attract people. Maybe that's the way we should be looking at things. Where are the target audiences that we should perhaps be picking up on?
Here's the thought. Go ahead, Jerry.
Just really quickly, at a high level, here's some of the tactics that I've seen work. So there's networking, there's outreach, and there's mentoring. So networking is like your personal, hey, anybody who might be interested in this, and that is amazingly effective. If you spread the word in your personal network that you're looking for somebody, you'll get all kinds of connections coming in. The next thing is outreach, stuff like this. You go to a college campus and you present, hey, here's what a day in the life of a data scientist looks like. Yeah. You get all kinds of people who are saying, hey, that looks pretty cool. I want to do that. And then the last thing is mentoring, which is you take people who have the potential and you just start mentoring them. Right? It doesn't have to be a formal thing, but letting them know that, look, I think your future trajectory is over here, and if you like, I can kind of walk you through that.
Yeah.
This outreach matter, I think, extend. I want to kind of push this out a bit because it's so meaningful, Jerry. I mean, we've seen the results of that. We have an opportunity to influence the direction of the way people grow in the future. And I think the opportunity, especially in collaboration with academia, is to make very clear early on in the process, even at the stage of setting curriculum, what the needs of an emerging tech might be. I think it's very clear in our minds, but unfortunately, we expect that to somehow magically occur at the time we're doing the recruiting, at the time that the graduate has completed their course of study. If we could get them a little bit earlier, I'm not talking about kindergarten, I'm talking about really at the university level, then there's a small nudge can have a big impact.
Does agility come back into this as well? Sorry, go on, Martin.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, we can gain from our engagement with the young people as well. So I've done some STEM work and working with a local college, and the kids there were putting together a mechanism to take plastic and recycle plastic to use in their 3D printer.
Okay.
And it wasn't something anyone had said, you need to do this, or set them as a project to pass an exam. They just thought it would be cool to figure out a way to recycle plastic to feed their 3D printer for all the things they were churning out of it. And those are the
meaningful problem.
Sorry?
Just like a meaningful problem to them.
Yeah, it is. It matters. And actually, one of those kids could end up creating maybe a technology for doing that at industrial scale in 10, 20 years time, or maybe even sooner. And that would change all of our lives. So that's the kind of way that they can bring new ideas to us, just because they're not weighed down by preconceptions. They've got that innovation and creative spirit, and it's there ready to be tapped by companies and by society.
We've been spending a lot of time just in the past few minutes talking about youth and young people, which is valuable. But I also want to get across that we recruit from all of the levels of achievements, different people at different stages of their careers. A couple of things that I want to get across is the matter of retraining, being able to take our experienced folks and put them into areas with which they may be less familiar. This kind of goes back to the idea of equipping people in what they do in their day jobs to do more interesting, more maybe not interesting necessarily, but valuable things. Finally, we also have this ability to engage with outside sources of talent. This could be drawing upon interesting third parties through partnerships with startups and fintechs, insurtechs, but also potentially with our partnership, for example, with the Dynamic Talent Club. Every one of these bring us a level of capability that we couldn't do on our own.
Hey, really quickly, Faisal, we had another question that come in that says, does DXC have youth programs like that? And I just want to say, absolutely. We had a code program, a youth code program where we ran these competitions for our kids to create games, video games using Scratch. And it was amazing the types of things that kids were able to come up with. This is like, 14, 15-year-olds. There's all kinds of programs like that DXC runs and that we sponsor.
And what do kids get out of that?
Oh, well, first of all, they get the experience of dealing with the technology. They get to solve a problem. They get honored. They get, for me, it's like a direction setting for some of these kids. They get the confidence that this particular field is something that they can get into and they can make a living on.
Cool.
So have we anything else to share as we're coming towards the end of the session?
one last comment that I want to make. Faisal made a point about diversity, and I just wanted to emphasize that in order for something like that to work, at least in my experience, in order for your diversity initiatives to work, it needs to be something that you actively go for, right? That you are actively engaging in groups, and you have you have an active goal of increasing your diversity. It's not something that just happens on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can all support that.
Well, this has been fun. I think we got some interaction from the chat. I think there was certainly a comment just agreeing about the idea of people who are front-facing, working with technology should themselves become security consultants. I think we can kind of extend that into all forms of emerging tech. So I'm very big on cross-pollination of what we consider specializations into the core members of different teams.
Yeah, I mean, I liked your point earlier about bringing in experience to the business, and I certainly found that in cybersecurity, working with people that have come from a career in policing or a career in the law, and actually that brings, you know, decades of experience in those fields, but they bring that to the cybersecurity area, and that really energizes us and informs us in a really meaningful way when dealing with real problems, and it gives them a level of gravitas when we're working with lawyers and working with people in law enforcement that actually shows we understand their business at a much deeper level than just a bunch of techies who like the cyber technologies.
Yeah. So guys, this is fun as always. Any parting words?
So I think from me, the key is that everyone needs to have a hand in security if they're working in one of the cyber industry side of things. And as you said, it's about cross-skilling as well, and as much as needing to bring people in just to the security side of the business. I've had to reskill myself on all sorts of different things throughout my career, and continue to have to do so. So I think that whilst the gap is there, that we know we've got vacancies we can't fill, we just have to become more innovative and maybe more agile in the way that we look to fill them.
Jerry?
No, nothing further to add. Great discussion as always. Thanks for including me.
Thank you, Jerry. Faisal?
Yeah, just to close, I think I would love the opportunity, perhaps outside of this conversation, to find the folks that could use that reskilling or the upskilling and be able to introduce them from across those organizational boundaries. So I look forward to being able to do that.
Okay, thanks, Faisal. So can I thank everyone for joining the session and participating today. It's been very informative for me and quite useful to share these ideas. And I don't think we've got so much of a challenge now with a gap. We've actually got opportunity now to use diversity, to use the fact that we've got a range of skills out there in the marketplace, a range of skills in academia, and a range of abilities from people we can bring into our business that will actually energize us and more than fill that gap, I think, in the long run. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.